Welcome into episode 315 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. The Bruins fall to the Florida Panthers 6-2 in Game 3 at TD Garden. They've been outscored 12-3 in Games 2 and 3 combined. Is that accurate, guys? And looking a whole lot of ugly along the way. So let's go right to your opening shifts and try to break this down as best we can.
All right, I can go first. Mine's kind of about a specific moment in the game because as poorly as the Bruins started, and they were getting outshot 24-8 at one point, they still found themselves, as the second period went on, down by only one. It was a 1-0 game. And they finally started to string together a couple good offensive zone shifts. The Coyle line had one. The third line was in there. Fourth line was maybe the only line that was pretty consistently good all game. And then it comes back to the Bruins' end for about 20 seconds, and Mason Lohrei commits a double minor high stick and just totally killed the Bruins' momentum. You know, Lohrei's been playing well. We've been singing his praises. I thought he was good for the most part last night. But that was an absolute killer. And then what made it even more of a killer is that the Bruins proceed to give up 2 goals on the ensuing 4-minute power play. Penalty kill was one of the few things like the Bruins were still doing really well prior to this game. And they got shredded in Game 3. Gave up 4 power play goals. If you want to say the last one was in garbage time, okay, whatever. Even before that, the Panthers were 3 for 5. So they weren't getting the clears that they usually get. They were giving up seam passes, plays right to the front of the net. Really, it seemed like the Panthers could just get whatever they wanted. The first of those 2 power play goals in the double minor, I think it was like a minute 40 into the double minor, and the Bruins had never gotten the puck out of the zone in a minute 40. Just not what we're used to seeing from the penalty kill. Not, a lot of things that we're not used to seeing happening these last 2 games. But that was just such a backbreaking sequence to look like you're finally starting to get momentum. You might be ready to make a push. And then double minor, 2 power play goals, 3-0. For all intents and purposes, game over just about at that point.
Yeah, it felt like it. And that was the loudest the Garden had been that whole night, was after that, the sequence where the Pasternak line ended up with a bunch of good shots on goal. The Garden was very loud. And then next thing you know, the chants stopped dead in their tracks as soon as the penalty happens. And then giving up 2 power play goals on that, it was just like, okay, that's just how this is going to go. So you're giving Florida too many chances. You're kind of like handing it to them on a silver platter at that point. At different times, it kind of felt like, okay, no, here you go. And that's exactly why Scott's opening shift is that they shot themselves in the foot, because it's an unnecessary penalty, and there were a lot of self-inflicted wounds once again. Which, Brian, wasn't this your opening shift like last podcast or after Game 2? Mm-hmm. Because it's the same thing. It's the failed clears, it's the turnovers, it's badly timed penalties that kill momentum, and now you're letting goals in on them as well. So we'll get back more to that in a little bit, but my opening shift is something that came from the game that could be a big problem for the Bruins. And it doesn't have anything to do with the final score, the loss, but Brad Marchand got hurt early in that game. Whatever it was, he played through it for the first 2 periods, because his injury happened, I think Scott and I looked it up, was like 3 minutes and 50 seconds into the game or something close to that. So it was in the first 4 minutes of the game, he takes this big hit from Sam Bennett, who is back in the lineup now. And Brian sent me a slowed down version of it this morning, because live, it looked like he hurt his arm, right? It kind of looked like he braced for the ice and the wall, and his right arm goes first. And But then on the slowed down version, you can see that Sam Bennett gets his right hand up like a quick jab and Marchand's like chin or in that area. It was shielded from view really because it was on the opposite side. It was towards the bench. I don't think anybody noticed it in real time, but there's a chance that Marchand's upper body injury is not arm related. He also, during the check, Bennett followed through like into his back. It was just a big awkward collision between those two. And what ends up happening is Marchand played almost 11 minutes of ice time, had 5 checks, no shots on goal, but then he gets pulled in the second intermission. Someone from the medical staff must have had a conversation with him, or I kind of doubt he pulled himself. So he leaves, doesn't come back for the third period, and we didn't get any really update after the game on whether or not he's going to be available for game 4.
Yeah, I actually thought it was his head at first because he looked very wobbly as he tried to get up and get to the bench. But then he didn't get pulled by any concussion spotter, so I was like, oh, maybe not. And then when you do see like the slow down replays and it looks like there is a bit of a rabbit punch there from Bennett, I'm like, do they still have concussion spotters? Like, what are those guys doing? Were they just, up with us, like mowing down popcorn? Because I don't know how they didn't pull him for a checkup there.
I mean, I'll be honest, like in real time, I thought that he was just in so much pain that he wasn't like, that he was like struggling to get to the bench because he was just like trying desperately to get off the ice. I didn't know if the wobbliness was from like a head injury or anything like that. It just kind of seemed like he was trying to get off, but kept, bumping into stuff. And then, but nobody stopped him from at least at that point. Now, who knows if there was somebody that called in the second intermission, said, hey, we went back and looked at this and we think he needs to not play in the third. There's a chance that happened.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the Sam Bennett effect, instantaneous. You knew that was going to happen. You kind of, when I found out that he was going to take part in pregame warmup, I was hoping that he was going to play for the Panthers. You want to see the Bruins, be challenged. You want to beat somebody when they're at their best. And if I'm the Bruins, you should welcome that challenge, welcome their full lineup, their full arsenal of players. And they weren't able to match it. I love the way Sam Bennett plays. I love the way a lot of the Florida Panthers play as a team. And that kind of leads into my opening shift, which is, yeah, Florida is more talented top to bottom. We knew that going in. We knew that when the Bruins beat them 4 times in the regular season. Like, we knew that the Panthers were the more talented team. But it's far more than just the talent discrepancy. It's the way Florida plays, and it's the way that the Bruins aren't playing. It's, you watch Florida and their relentless forecheck, that's not talent, right? That's work ethic. Their quick reloads, that's not talent. That's work ethic. That's coaching. That's strategy. Their back pressure, not talent. That's effort. Their defensive zone coverage, not talent. That's effort. There's a lot of the game that when it's not a matter of how well you stick handle or how fast you shoot or the passes that you can make. Yes, obviously, don't get me wrong. Talent plays a big factor in all professional sports. This is so far beyond the talent discrepancy between the two teams. We've all seen lesser teams put up, very, very tough battles against superior talented teams because they bring that work ethic, because they know they have to outwork them. So after game 2, very, very festive way to end that game, feisty, and there's a lot of storylines and that comes from that game, and a lot of anticipation going into game 3. The fans were buzzing in Boston. They couldn't wait for the puck to drop, for the Bruins to put their best foot forward in front of them and try to get ahead of the series. And it just never happened. There was never a 10-minute surge where the Bruins are all over Florida like you would expect. I think the opening shift, DeBrusk got it in the forecheck, laid a nice hit, but Florida took the game to the Bruins, and you have to wonder why, right? It's not like the Bruins entered that game man-to-man wanting it less than the Panthers, right? Sometimes you see those comments online. Oh, Florida just wants it more. There could be something to that, but I don't think man to man the Panthers want the Stanley Cup more than the Bruins. I do think that there's an element of strategy and game plan that might amplify the way that looks. I just think Florida plays a style of hockey that they're on their toes. And so I guess I'll ask you guys, because again, here are the Bruins averaging about, 15 shots a game. This dates back to before the playoffs started. The Bruins had some stretches of hockey before the end of the season closed where they weren't getting shots through. And they were and the Toronto series, how many times are you going to watch the same old song and dance, guys? So is it a game plan? Is it a lack of strategy, execution? Because these guys are all NHLers. You need to tell me that they can't put up more than 10 shots a game heading into third periods. I just don't understand it. So I think it's beyond just the fact that Florida has a little bit more talent than Boston, because even the Bruins top players aren't doing a whole lot of anything.
Yeah, I think it's both, because yes, like they need better effort, they need better starts. That's fair. I do think for the most part, I think the Bruins are a fairly hardworking team, and I think they've played really physical hockey these playoffs overall. I think they've tried to play like the Panthers, quite frankly. Like, I think they've tried to play that brand of physical playoff style hockey. I think that's been a focus all year in terms of their offense, where Montgomery has really stressed quality over quantity, and he's made it all about getting inside and getting grade A chances and getting two bodies going towards the net or at the net. But where the talent comes in is when you face a team that also plays that way, but does it with better players than you have, which side's going to come out on top? Like if you're trying to play the same way and one team is just better than the other, just has more better players, that team's going to come out on top. And that's what I think you're seeing. Like the Bruins they want to get inside. They don't want to just throw the puck on net from anywhere, but the Panthers aren't letting them get inside because they know this game. Like that's how they play. So yeah, like adjustment wise, I would like to see the Bruins maybe resort to more quantity over quality. Like be willing to throw pucks on from anywhere. Has anyone thought Sergei Bobrovsky's had a good series? I think he's looked pretty shaky. Bruins just haven't tested him enough. And that's where I'm like, maybe just try throwing it on from it. Like, yeah, the strategy was admirable. The focus this season was the right idea. Like it was, how many times have we come on after a Bruins playoff run and been like, they didn't get inside enough? Like I totally get where it came from. But if you're not doing it, and to your point, Brian, like you're ending up with 3 shots on goal in the first period, at some point you got to try something else, and you got to be a little more willing to settle for some low danger shots and hope Bobrovsky coughs up a rebound. Hope someone can get a tip, like whatever it might be, because right now you're not getting those quality chances. So you're going kind of one and done in the offensive zone, spending no time down there. And then the Panthers are coming back, and because they're so good at what they do, they're hemming you in and they're getting their cycle going.
Well, and also it's not just from day one when you play hockey, what do coaches tell you? It's never a bad play to throw it at the net. Why is that the advice? I'll tell you, it's not simply because if you throw it at the net, the puck's going to go in. Yes, they say throw it at the net, good things happen. But also
you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Right.
Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Bridget Prue. But what else happens, guys, if you just throw the puck at the net and you just like what else happens? What's a byproduct of that? You get the opposition running around and out of position. You get them outside their comfort zone. And so when you throw it at the net and now everybody has to go chase rebounds, like you mentioned, Scott, say the puck goes off Bobrovsky into the corner. Like now you have the opposition scrambling. And that's when passing lanes open up and other scoring opportunities present themselves. And yeah, it's just it's very evident that the Bruins just can't. I mean, the Bruins defense can't get pucks through at all. Great shot from Lohrei in game 1. Great shot from Carlo in game 1. Those were, the Carlo play was a rush play, and the Lohrei goal was he was down low. He might as well have been a left winger there. Bruins aren't getting shots through from the point traditionally, and again, forwards as well. Like it's just get at the net. Good things happen, and it gets the other team scrambling, and that's what happens with the Bruins. That's what Florida does. That's why you see the Bruins look all disheveled, because that's exactly what the Florida Panthers are doing. I don't know. Scott, you mentioned it's an admirable philosophy to go quality over quantity. Teams are too good. Players are too good. You have to just you can't be too selective in the game of hockey. It's not a game played by robots, and if you think you're gonna find the perfect play, it's not gonna work out for you. And that's what you're seeing right now. You have one team that's simplifying the game. And even though they have more skill than the Bruins, they're playing as though they're the team with the least amount of skill in the series, because they're simplifying their game and they're playing meat and potatoes hockey. And simple is better. It really is. I don't know why the Bruins are overcomplicating things.
Well, and when you look at the shots in the last 8 periods, there's no period that they had 10 or more shots. The only one in the entire series was the very first period of the series where they had 14. And you know what? That was probably the one period you could say that they genuinely looked better than Florida. Pretty much every other period, they had pushes here and there, but to get outshot 8 periods in a row, or technically the very last period of game 3 was tied 9-9. It's crazy. If you know that stat, you probably already know that the Bruins are not ahead in the series. And sometimes the shot selection from the point has been bad too. Like, Brian, you want to take simple shots and get pucks through. Well, you do need to find the lane to the net still. And sometimes from the blue line, the puck's not making it maybe like 10 feet before it gets blocked. It's not making it all the way through. So there's definitely something to trying to open those lanes and get more pucks to the net, to the front of the net. I thought that Van Riemsdyk did a really good job in terms of creating high danger chances. When he was out there, he was kind of all around the net. DeBrusk, I thought, played decent. He had the goal. He also had one when they were in that push. It would have been the third goal if the Bruins had scored it. Shot one off the crossbar. In close, and there was a flurry where you felt like, okay, well, wait a minute, it was 4-2, and maybe they're not out of it, but if it was a 3-2 game, I would have really felt like they had something going. But I still think that 2-goal margin to try to tie it was a factor, and that's because the Brendan Montour goal on the power play, point shot, finds its way through. I thought that Swayman looked slow to react. You guys both said you thought that he had a moving screen out in front of him. I'm sure he was dealing with something, because he doesn't normally give that kind of shot up from that distance if nothing's going on. But that would have been the one goal that I saw that made, and not talking about the garbage goals, but that maybe he could have had.
I asked him about that after the game. He said he was screened. And again, it's just like a situational awareness thing where there is no one. The only person between Brandon Montour and Jeremy Swayman on that shot is Johnny Beecher. And it's like he just didn't know what was behind. Like, he didn't realize there was no one behind him. Because if he just leaves that lane open and lets Swayman see it, Swayman probably makes a save, right? Like, you can shoot it 110 miles an hour, but if it's from the center point, like, most goalies are probably going to save that. And Beecher, for whatever reason, like, moves in front of Montour, like, as if he's going to block it, but then he doesn't actually get all the ways in front of it. And it's like, it was just enough to throw Swayman off and to ruin his line of sight. And it's like, again, like you just have to know where you are on the ice, and you have to trust that your goalie, like, either actually get in front of it and take a rocket to the kneecap, or trust that your goalie is going to make the save and get out of the way. So just I just thought, like, not, again, we're talking about penalty kill breakdowns. That was one of the power play goals. Like, knowing your lanes, knowing your angles is part of that. And in that case, Beecher creates a screen really completely unnecessarily. The shot differentials and stuff, like, they're getting completely smoked 5-on-5 in the series. And I know if you look at 5-on-5 goals, it says 6-6, but zone time, possession, attempts, like, Panthers have 61% of 5-on-5 shot attempts. 5-on-5 shots on goal in this series, and now 74-47 for Florida. It's so lopsided. And Jim Montgomery, as much as anyone, knows that's a problem. After the game, he was asked about, he said, historically, the team that has more ozone time in a series will usually, over 7 games, prevail. Special teams and goaltenders figure into that mix. We need to get it better there. Our ozone time and breaking pucks out. Like, if you're gonna lose like that lopsided 5-on-5, your only chance is to dominate special teams and get much better goaltending. And right now, like we've already said it, your special teams completely fell apart. Your penalty kill gives up 4, and your power play is now 0 for 7 in the series. And you only got 2 tries. You only got 2 cracks at it in game 3. Again, because where do you draw most of your penalties? You draw it when you have the puck in the offensive zone, and they don't have it, the puck in the offensive zone. Mm-hmm. So that's its own problem. But even when they get on there, the power play is back to looking very slow. And just when you watch the Bruins power plays last night to the Panthers, it is night and day in terms of body movement, puck movement, how quick things are going,
decision making.
All of it, like night and day.
Yeah, and it's all tied together, right? You mentioned it. You draw a lot of penalties in the ozone, but like this is, by the way, not just a Florida Panthers series. Like, for a lot of that Toronto series, especially after game 4, the Bruins were getting severely outshot. I think they were getting possessed in the ozone. They certainly didn't get as many power plays as Toronto. They're getting not nearly as many power plays as Florida in the series. And it's not because the refs are out to get the Bruins. It's because the Bruins aren't earning their opportunities because they are on their heels constantly. It's all tied together. It really does. It makes sense. It's just, you have individuals on the Bruins that need to step up. I mean, Pavel Zacha, he had a nice assist in game 2 against the Maple Leafs. He had a nice assist in game 2 against the Panthers. Outside of that, he's done a whole lot of nothing. And I really mean that. He's not playing a style of hockey that's conducive to playoff success. He very much kind of seems, and that stands true because he's played about 20 games in the postseason now in his career, maybe a little bit more. He's yet to score a goal. So there's a big sample size here of a player who might not rise to the occasion, might not rise to the physicality and the demands of playoff hockey. And I think that this sample size allows us to at least raise that question. And I bring him up specifically right now because while the team as an entirety, outside of goaltending, again, really failed to do much of anything, it's Pavel Zacha who, in the first 5+ minutes of the game, takes a penalty. And is it a ticky-tack call? I don't know. Maybe I'd have to go back and watch it, but I mean, those happen all the time. So, and then the Bruins kill off the penalty in which he took, and he gets out there and turns the puck over in the middle of the ice, and it leads to a Florida Panthers goal. And it's just can't happen. If you're not going to help your team, you certainly can't hurt them. And he's one player that really needs to be better among a team full of players that need to be better at times.
Yeah, my first 2 notes from the game were Zacha neutral zone turnover. Zacha, another turnover, can't handle pass, and then skip a little bit, then it's the penalty, and then it's him coming out of the box and immediately turning it over. So that's 4 plays very early on in that game that he did not look great. And I don't really know. I feel like that was the worst we've seen him play in a while. Or like he's gotten quieter and quieter. Some games he just kind of disappears, but this game he actually legitimately hurt the team, especially early on. And it's one thing to really rely on him to facilitate plays to Pasta, helps Pasta score, helps him produce. And Zacha hasn't really been doing that in the playoffs either, aside from a few of those really quick plays to Pasta for goals that we've talked about. But now you see him not just being quiet, but turning the puck over, and it putting the Bruins down 1-0 pretty early and digging them a hole. And I'm not really sure exactly why we're seeing him play like this now, when in the regular season, I don't think he was like this. There's a few players on the team right now where I'm watching how they're playing. I'm like, what happened? Like, how come you're doing the opposite of what you need to do in the playoffs, and you're not stepping up? It's almost like you're letting the gravity of the situation kind of give you anxiety.
I think that's kind of, you don't have to look too far for the answer. It's the difference is it's the playoffs, and it's a more demanding style of play. I don't think there's anything really more to it than that. There's a reason why certain players play well in the regular season and don't play well in the postseason. Look at Mitch Marner. Like, there's a demand. There's a style that you have to play. Scott, I didn't mean to jump in there, but I think just that's the obvious answer.
Yeah, I think you're seeing guys who are struggling to rise to their, like, where their spot in the lineup is, and specifically at the center position. Like, I think Coyle's had a lot of quiet games too. Offensively, his numbers aren't there. 4 points in 10 games. Like, Zacha, 5 assists but no goals. Like, that's not good enough from what was supposed to be your first and second line centers. Now, Zacha's been bumped over to the wing the last several games. Geeky's moved up. Geeky's had some good games. At least he's scored 3 goals, but it comes back to, what we knew was going to be the problem all along, which is you don't have a number 1 center. You don't have Alexander Barkov. Like, that becomes glaringly obvious in the playoffs when you don't have a center who can really step up to that kind of all situations demand of a number 1 center at this time of year. So yes, Zach has to be better individually. I thought the move to the wing initially got him going a little bit, and now it looks like he's regressed back to being very quiet and making bad decisions with the puck. Coyle has to be better individually, but at the end of the day, like, there's only so much realistically that those guys are going to be able to do. Like, it would be great if one of them, had the breakout series of their life and was matching Alexander Barkov, but it's just not a realistic expectation.
No, this is what we've been saying all along, guys. There is a ceiling to this Bruins team, unless they were able to do something that I've never seen really another team do before, which is win a Stanley Cup without, a true high end, top center. And, it's just, it doesn't work. It doesn't work when you get deeper into the playoffs and you are matched up against players of the caliber that they'll be matched up against, like Scott just mentioned. And the reality of the situation, guys, and this is not me giving a eulogy when the series is 2-1, but the reality is, I think this Bruins team has already probably overachieved based on like getting past the first round. I think they had an inferior roster. Well, I don't know. The Toronto matchup is different because I do think Toronto's defense is pretty okay on paper, but I don't know. There's a cap to this Bruins team. There's a ceiling, and we're seeing it, But it's even still, you don't want them to look like an AHL team out there. Like, that's what I'm surprised about. I'm not surprised if the Florida Panthers win this series, right? I'm surprised if they do so, making the Bruins look like Providence. because there's no level of talent discrepancy that should make that appear that way at all. And that's what to me is frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, from the start of the second period of game 2 until 3 minutes into the third period of game 3, they gave up 10 straight goals, which, by the way, is a Bruins playoff record. Not the kind of record you want. Never before had the Bruins given up 10 straight goals in the playoffs. Like, it's brutal. And like, yeah, it was nice to see you literally fight back in the third period of game 2. They had a good push, in the third period of game 3, get it from 4-0 to 4-2. Had a couple chances after that. Maybe if you cut it to 4-3 with 5 minutes to go, you got something going. But it's the fact that you ended up in those situations in the first place. Like, you can't have games get away from you like that. So, sure, like, I think the way they played in the third period, if you can find a way to channel that into the start of your game on Sunday, you might be in pretty good shape. Like, that's a level of desperation and urgency you have to play with. Can they? I don't know. They generally don't start well at home, so I have my doubts.
Yeah, I don't understand why. Like, on the one hand, I want to give them credit for coming back down 4-0 a little bit, and on the other hand, I'm like, why does it take you guys to be down 4-0 in the third to kick it up a notch? It's just, and also it's probably Florida letting off the gas a little bit too. So
right.
Yeah, and then that's not the final score either, is it?
No.
Because it all goes to shit at the end when you give up an empty net goal and then you give up another one. Once again, the ending ugly, almost not even worth talking about because it was over at that point once the empty net goal goes in. And by the way, we're talking about how your number one center or your top two centers aren't showing up really the way that you need for a Stanley Cup contending team. I don't think your top defenseman has showed up the way they need to either. I think those are two really key positions where, like, you're getting it from your goalie, but your top centers and your top defensemen are not playing to the level of other top defensemen in the league, other top centers in the league, but also even to their own standards.
Yeah, and Bridget, you mentioned the top defenseman, and Scott, off the top, you mentioned the Lohrei penalty and how it kind of the double minor, which, by the way, Florida scores both. they score in the first 2 minutes and last 2 minutes, so unacceptable. But the Lohrei high stick, as Scott mentioned, came at the end of the Bruins' really first good string of shifts all game, with like 5 minutes left in the second period, and that momentum died on the stick of Charlie McAvoy. Just can't keep a puck in at the offensive blue line, and it's like the Sam Darnold seeing ghosts with this kid. Like, the puck's coming to him and he freezes, and he just can't. He doesn't know what he wants to do before he gets it, and next thing you know, it's down the other end, and then Lohrei takes a penalty, and God, it goes from bad to worse with him. And I don't think McAvoy played a particularly bad game in game 3 like he did in game 2, but just not recognizing the moment. It's just when it's going bad, it's going bad. It's snowballing for him right now.
Yeah, and kind of along the lines of what I was just saying, like with the third period, like, where has that Bruins team been? Where has that McAvoy been? Because the way he played in the third period, he was all over the place making things happen. I thought he was really aggressive. I thought he was driving into the offensive zone. He was active. He was moving all over. And I get that, obviously, part of that is you're playing with the desperation of being down. So naturally, you're a little more freewheeling. You're willing to take some more chances. And I'm not saying I want him to go like all out reckless out of the gate in game 4, but a little more of that would be really nice. Like Brian, you said, kind of just like the mental aspect of it, the decision making, being slow, like just more decisiveness, just that aggressiveness that I think, we usually see when McAvoy's at his best. It hasn't been there in a little bit. Like, it feels like he's playing conservative or almost playing not to make mistakes, but as so often happens in hockey or really any sport, if you start worrying about I got to be careful here. I don't want to make a mistake. That's usually when you make more mistakes.
It
So I think,
happens to me all the time. It happens to me all the time on broadcasts. If I'm worried about making a mistake, guess who's making a mistake that day?
yeah,
Me.
exactly. Like that probably applies to like just about everything in life. And I thought the McAvoy you saw in the third period was one who wasn't worrying about mistakes. He was just trying to attack and make things happen. And I think you need more of that. Like I think he needs to carry that mindset and over. And like if he can, you might finally start to see the McAvoy I think everyone wants to see.
Well, that'll be a huge development because, again, as much as we talk about how Florida has the better roster on paper, top to bottom, the Bruins should have the best. Well, Barkov depends who you want to call a better forward, Barkov or Pastrnak. I mean, they're two different positions and they both bring two different elements. Pasternak's more of a dynamic scorer, Barkov's more of a two-way center and an elite one at that. But McAvoy should be the best defenseman in the series too. Like the Bruins should possess some of the best players in the series, while Florida has. I mean, I guess Matthew Tkachuk is the other, and Sam Reinhart, 57 goals. So the Panthers have some candidates, but I wouldn't put Sam Reinhart over Pastrnak in a given year.
Like this is the problem though when you start to do the versus matchup is like even if it's even if you wanted to take Pastrnak first, it's like the Panthers at least have the next 3.
Right.
Probably the next 4 if you throw in Verhaeghe. And like Sam Bennett's not too far below that.
No.
To Tarasenko, like again, I don't know why he was buried on the third line to start this series, but you see that goal he scores last night, it's like, oh yeah, that dude's still a sniper. Like
right.
Again, like I don't think Tarasenko was all around game as, like as elite as it used to be, but yeah, it's like it starts to move towards the Panthers pretty quickly. And even on defense, like that was an advantage for the Bruins. I remember last year we all looked at the Panthers blue line and you were like, Josh Mahura's like on the second pair. Like, who is that? And like now you look at this and it's like that. So even if you wanted to put McAvoy first, and even if you thought Lindholm's high, it's like Ekblad had a bad game 1. I think he's been better since. Gustav Forsling had an awesome season. I just really love his game. Montour, we all know the damage he can do, and he is continuing to do that damage. He's been a force in this series. So it's like you don't have the clear advantage there. The only place you would hope you do is in goal. And I don't know if we want to shift to this now or if you guys had, more thoughts on McAvoy or the defense, but like, I think it is worth bringing up goaltending because again, not Swayman's fault, like not all on him by any means, but he has given up 9 goals in the last 2 games. No matter what excuses you want to make, like that's not going to get it done.
Yeah. I mean, we can go to that because I don't want to like, and I do think McAvoy's play has been down and it's been concerning, but I feel like we can move on from that now because it should be something that most people that I've talked to, they've noticed it and they've pointed it out. Yeah. Like there are a few people who are saying, no, it's fine. Like he's doing okay.
Like Razor.
But I just to clarify before you move on, Bridget, like, so Scott, the reasons you said the amount of top players Florida has is why Florida should win the series. What I'm saying is there's no reason why Pastrnak and McAvoy shouldn't be looking dominant in their own right at times because they should be, so right. That's all I was kind of getting at.
And like I thought Pastrnak played pretty well in game 3 and made some things happen, but fact remains he has 0 goals in the series. Mm-hmm. Like we can say he's made some things happen and looks like the efforts there, applaud him for fighting Tkachuk, whatever. His number 1 job is to score goals, and he hasn't done that yet in this series.
Yeah, but and you want to know what multiple people said yesterday after the game when we were in post game in the locker room with Coach and some of his teammates. They mentioned that Pastrnak, when Marchand was absent, that Pastrnak and McAvoy and Maroon were the guys that were talking on the bench, and they were the guys that were vocal and trying to lift the energy and lead with Marchand not there. So I just wanted to bring that up as well. Tie it back into how all of this, ties into Marchand being gone. But yeah, I mean, And if he is gone for next game or misses any time, that's another huge blow where you're going, okay, now that's just one other guy on the ice that the Bruins don't have, and they don't have the ability to, compare them to some of those guys that you were just mentioning. So that you're going to lose that top 6 battle even harder if Marchand's not in there.
Yeah, and since we started recording, the whole Sam Bennett clip of him getting a pretty good right hand on Marchand on that play where he went down is kind of going viral now, and people are starting to pick up on it more and more. And yeah, I mean, look, you are already losing the top 6 battle. You lose your second best forward. That's not good. And just before we hop into the goaltending, because unfortunately, guys, I don't think you could have Martin Brodeur and Patrick Roy in the net at the same time. I don't know if it's going to fix some of the problems the Bruins have been having lately, but the Bruins at home, we talked about it heading into the playoffs in general. Heading into the 2024 postseason, I think the Bruins were about 500 in their last almost 20 games at TD Garden. Well, you go 2-2 against the Maple Leafs, and right now you've lost 1 to the Panthers. So again, they're struggling at home, but dating back to Game 5 against Toronto, the Bruins had 3 goals scored in 8+ periods consecutively, dating back to Game 5 against Toronto, heading into period 3 against the Panthers last night. And then the Bruins finally scored 2 goals in the third. The game's already 4-0. What's going on with them at home? Is it just like we talked about how they're not getting to inside ice? They're too selective with their shots. It's quality over quantity. There's a million reasons why they're not playing well, but those philosophies are the same on the road, one would imagine. They just can't. There was no excuse why last night the Bruins couldn't have that Garden crowd rocking with enthusiasm just based on forechecking and near falls alone. Like, just there was a whole lot of nothing, and I think they definitely play better on the road, at least in the playoffs.
Yeah, gotta get him back in a hotel Saturday night. Get Shattenkirk to give another speech. Like, obviously, like, I'm partly joking, but I don't know. There's no reasonable explanation for why they keep getting off to such bad starts on home ice. Yeah, like, you should be able to use the crowd to your advantage, and they just can't seem to do it. So I don't know. Like, they did their morning skate at the Garden again, so they kept that part carried over from Game 7. They're in their building, like, that they should be comfortable. Like, I'm stumbling over my words because I have no explanation
Right
anymore. Like, that there's just there is no way to explain it. Like, it's completely baffling how they struggle so much at home in the playoffs. Like, that's the thing. It's like, it's not like they were a bad home team in the regular season.
No,
they were good on home ice in the regular season. So there should have been some confidence there. And, now I do wonder if, like, part of it at this point is it starts to get in their head where, you threw 10 minutes and you have 2 shots on goal or whatever. And is there an element of, like, like, we're doing it again, but boy, why can't we get going? I don't know, but, like, somehow you gotta fight through that.
hey, the good news is they can't blow a 3-1 series lead.
True. Yeah.
that is true. That is absolutely true. Yeah,
It's not going to happen. It's not possible. They could end up on the other side of it very easily if they lose the next home game in Game 4.
Bridget, you mentioned that, and you think back to last year, right? Here we are talking about how Florida is just a more complete team, right? They play the right way, and that is true. But last year it was the Bruins who were the heavy favorite. That also, I'm pretty sure, had a 6-0 win in Game 3. And the Panthers did go down 3-1 to a heavy favorite, and they found a way to win. Now, I think last year's Florida Panthers team was more talented than this year's Boston Bruins team, and clearly they play a style that is playoff hockey. But yeah, I mean, this episode is to not write the Bruins eulogy, right, in this series. It's just that if things continue the way that they have been, that's it. This Bruins team's not going down 3-1 to the Panthers and winning. It's not happening. It's not just a lack of talent that the Bruins have compared to the Panthers top to bottom. It's the fact that the Panthers play like they're the least talented team effort-wise. Like the Panthers have it all. And the Bruins, they desperately need to win game 4 and tie the series at 2.
Yeah, and I think what we're about to get into is one thing that the one battle that they are winning, even though, Swayman's gave up 6. Technically, he wasn't in net for the empty netter, but the Bruins have given up 6 goals in back-to-back games, right? So you wouldn't say that it looks like on paper that they have the advantage in net. But Bobrovsky hasn't looked good. He just hasn't been tested in the last 2 games. I saw Connor Ryan, one of our colleagues, tweet out the meme of Shane Gillis just on his couch, just like looking bored, like texting. Like that's what Bobrovsky felt like, at least after the first period yesterday, because he had nothing to do. He saw 3 shots in the whole first period. He must have been bored. And then you see him out of position again on a few different times that the Bruins almost scored in the third. And you just know that if they can be more consistent with generating chances like they were down low during that brief pushback that they had to try to get back in the game, they're going to score on Bobrovsky. So there's something there that you could, at least, if you could figure out a way to generate more, get more shots on goal, which I don't understand why it's so hard. Then you have hope there that you could find a few on Bobrovsky, because Swayman, if you don't hang Swayman out to dry, he was only giving up 1 to 2 goals per game before this meltdown that happened in game 2 and game 3.
Yeah, I also I can't let Swayman totally off the hook though. Like, when you've given up, he's been in there for 9 goals in 2 games. Like, again, you could sit there and say none of them are soft, but as I've said before, like, I made this point, like, playoffs isn't just about stopping the shots you're supposed to stop. You also have to make saves you're not really expected to make. And Swayman did that for his first 7 starts of the playoffs. He was excellent.
He still did that in different situations in the last 2 games.
Here and there, but he's clearly not been the brick wall he was his first 7 starts.
But he's also been getting hung out to dry, like insanely bad, like failed clears, a bunch of zone time that the Bruins can't get the puck out of their own end.
Yeah, but some of that was happening in the first round too. I mean, Brian mentioned it rightly. Like, they were getting outpossessed by Toronto a lot as that series went on.
Yeah, the Leafs just don't have the killer instinct that Florida has to make you pay for it.
Yeah, again, I don't think Swayman's very high on the list of problems. I just don't want to totally let him off the hook and be like, oh, well, nothing he can do. No. He could be better these last 2 games.
The difference here in this series is that Toronto is getting a lot of opportunities by Bruins turnovers or swimming up to dry, whatever you want to call it. The difference here is that Mitch Marner is not going to go to the front of the net and out-battle Brandon Carlo for stick position right in front of Swayman. Carter Verhaeghe did. And, the Florida Panthers' top scoring threats will go to the net hard. Toronto's didn't. So it's not just there's an added element where it's ultimately they can just make things capitalize closer and tight because they're willing to go there, where Toronto, for the most part, was not willing to go there. And ultimately, guys, Scott, you say you don't want to let Swayman off the hook, and that's fair. It doesn't matter who's in goal. If the Bruins are going to play like this, it does not matter. So I guess the question is there any okay, if you go to Ullmark, does Swayman lose confidence? I don't know. Maybe you go to Ullmark and Ullmark plays great for a couple of games. And so again, like Bridget and I said off the top of the playoffs, we're not opposed to using both goalies, especially if one goalie seems to be having a couple of rough games. And again, it's not Swayman having rough games, but if you just want to change things up, I don't know. But it's so far beyond who's in the crease right now, because a goalie can steal a game and steal a series to an extent, but when you're just getting completely dominated in every aspect and they're getting grade A chances right in front of you, and your defense are getting up muscled, like the Alex Alex, what the fuck? What's his first name? Evan Rodriguez. the first
Alex Rodriguez. Wrong sport, Brian.
Well, he batted it in like Alex Rodriguez. So, he's somehow gains position in front of the net. Carter Verhaeghe out muscles Carlo. Like, so you have Tarasenko beating Swayman from distance on a perfect shot, tip of the cap, but then Florida goes to the dirty areas too. So I don't know if Allmark's making those saves either, but
yeah, I mean,
try something. Again, try something.
Montour from distance. Yeah, as I said, there was a screen, but can he do more to see around it? Rodriguez's second goal. Again, I know it's late, it's garbage time. Maybe it's who cares, but that's a one-timer over the glove. Yeah. So for the record, yes, I would go to Ullmark in game 4. Like, I'll just get that out there.
Oh.
It's one of the things you can change, and I think you have to change something. Yeah. And, listen, we said, right, Ullmark lost his spot in the rotation because he lost. And we said it wasn't his fault, really. He was, he wasn't the issue in game 2 against the Leafs, but Swayman was playing better. He was winning. Ullmark lost, so Swayman's net. Okay, well, Swayman's lost 2 in a row. Like, I just think, like, this is the situation where you do make the change. I was totally on board with going back to him in game 3, give him that chance to bounce back. Again, like, I'll say it till moon in the face, not his fault in game 3, not even close to the top of the list of problems, but he didn't really bounce back. Like, he wasn't able to steal it. So you've lost 2 in a row with him in net. I would go to Ullmark.
Sure. I co-sign on that because, like you said, Scott, it's a change that they can make. And look, maybe Swayman's already losing a little bit of confidence against this Florida team, right? Give Ullmark a fresh start, give the Panthers a different look. You're down 2-1. If you go down 3-1 with Swayman in net, it's too late to go to Ullmark. So I think now is the time to probably try to, change things a little bit. And again, both capable goalies. Yeah, when you lose 6-1 and 6-2, all's fair. So I have no issue with it for game 3. And if Ullmark wins, great. Keep going with them. And here's the good problem the Bruins have, right? You have 2 great goalies. Now, if Ullmark goes into game 4 and gets lit up, and now both Bruins goalies have been lit up by the Panthers, what can you do? Panthers are just a better team. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, and to just like, because we only saw Ullmark for 18 and a half minutes because he came in game 2 to relieve Swayman. And I actually thought we might see him again in game 3. I thought we might have seen him come out for the 3rd, but Montgomery once again did not do that. Which does kind of indicate to me that he was just going to let Swayman finish it out and maybe make the decision for the next game. But to go back and look at the way that Ullmark's played against Florida this series in the regular season, he won all 3 games. There were 3 strong performances. So I don't really see an issue with going to Ullmark in game 4 at all. I just want it to be clear that I don't think like Brian said, I don't know if either of them are in net for a win in that game, the way that the team played in front of them. So that's really more of my point. And I think that both your goalies, if you're Boston, have the ability to play better than Bobrovsky. Yes, he can make some of these crazy robbery saves, but a lot of times he's out of position and he's not, he's making stops he shouldn't on some, and he's missing some that he definitely shouldn't, that maybe a more stay-at-home goalie would not allow. So there's definitely cracks on his part that the Bruins could try to, if they get pucks on goal, see if they could get a good bounce here or there. But to your point about a fresh start, they clearly need that. Like, it is so obvious that in the last 2 games, they're just not right. Like, I don't know. It's the whole like, even body language just feels like it needs to change. So, and you're right, there's not a lot you can do especially like if you have a few players hurt up front. We don't know if Heinen's coming back. We don't know if Marchand's available. One of the few things you can do without really hurting your team is to change up who you have in net. I'm curious if you guys would change anything on the defense, because we saw Forbort for the first 3 games. We saw Andrew Peeke come back. He got no time on the penalty kill, which is one of his strong suits. So you take out Weatherspoon, who was doing well on the penalty kill. You bring in Andrew Peeke, who's a good penalty killer, but you don't give him any time because obviously they're still trying to make sure his injury, like they're working him back in slowly with the injury. But to me, that felt like, maybe a missed opportunity to either be more aggressive with Peeke and let him play the PK, or a bad idea to take out Weatherspoon if Peeke wasn't fully ready to go.
Well, but by the way, Forbort was also third among Bruins defensemen in penalty kill ice time. Like, it was all Carlo and Lindholm, which I'm like, if those third pairing guys aren't in there to eat some of the PK minutes and free up your top 4 defensemen, like, what are they doing? Like, then what are they in there for?
And then and what's Forbort doing? Is he taking offensive zone shifts and he's
I mean, listen, he still got
let's let him run PP1.
Yeah, like, listen, he still got 302, so it's not like he wasn't out there or anything, but Carlo was 535 and Lindholm 446.
Yeah, how'd they do?
Right. So it's like, you gotta do something different on the penalty.
I mean, I will tell you this. I don't know why I'm so fixated on the third Panthers goal, but we talked about it earlier. I originally showed you guys that goal because of Lindholm being out of position. And then the more I watch it, yes, he is. But, and I mentioned a few minutes ago, Carlo just got completely outmuscled by Carter Verhaeghe. Like, you think Wotherspoon or Peeke are letting that happen? Like, and by the way, Forbort and Peeke did not have chemistry at all. One of the first penalty kills Forbort's out there, he just coughs a puck right up to the blue line. Like, Forbort's, I know I mentioned this a couple episodes ago. Like, I don't know why everybody's hating on Forbort. He's not going to make or break you. Well, you know what? He shouldn't be, but he's not playing very well. And I all along was saying that the third D pair should have been Peeke and Wotherspoon. But I wasn't upset with Forbort going into the lineup to start the series because it was at the expense of Kevin Shattenkirk. And I understood that this series, they probably wanted a bigger third D pair that's more defensive minded. The second that Peeke comes back into the lineup, it's a no-brainer. It's Peeke and Wotherspoon. And here comes Monty, just like tinkering with things that work. And Scott mentioned that it works against the Panthers. You saw it in the regular season. So it's just I don't know, man. It's so frustrating.
Like, if you're Montgomery, you have to go Wotherspoon Peeke for game 4 because, again, like, I know I've mentioned it, but that final regular season game against the Panthers, Montgomery went out of his way to match up Wotherspoon and Peeke against the Bennett Tkachuk line. And they pretty much shut them down. Like, at the very least, they broke even. They gave up very few chances and they brought attitude. Like, they were hitting those guys. They were engaged. They were chirping. They were shoving after the width. Like, they were giving it to them. And Montgomery, after the game, had, like, all kinds of praise for them. Said, like, we went out of our way to get that matchup. I thought they brought intensity and physicality. Like, high praise for those two. If you go down in a playoff series without giving that pairing a look, like again, playoffs different than regular season. Maybe it doesn't work the same way. But if you go down without even trying it, that is, forget second guess. Like, that is an easy first guess and a very questionable decision. I have said for a long time, like, I don't understand the love affair with Forbort. I don't know why, if he's cleared to play, he's an automatic in the lineup. Like, yeah. I get he brings some valuable stuff, but Montgomery clearly, like, absolutely loves Forbort. And it has become an almost automatic that if he's able to play, he's playing. And I don't understand why.
Well, in my mind, the only thing I can think is Peeke isn't, like, if Peake's not 100% ready, then maybe they wanted to be conservative with trying to match up a Wotherspoon Peeke pairing with Tkachuk's line. Like, in my mind, the only way you second guess this is health. But then that leads me to another question of,
then Peeke shouldn't be in there
in the first place.
Yeah. if someone's not 100%, you shouldn't be forcing them into a playoff series anyways.
No.
I just think like Wotherspoon, the poor kid, he's like played amazing. I really feel like since he kind of got his call up and he really took off, and he has more to like. He has a bit of a, I don't want to say Connor Clifton in him because I think Clifton definitely has a little bit more offensive flair, but like he's not afraid to jump into the rush and just do a cross court and dump and chase after, just change the look for the opposition. Like Forbort just doesn't do anything. He sits back and he's very much somebody who's always on his heels. And I feel like Wotherspoon is on his toes. And Scott, I mean, selfishly speaking, I would love to have you ask Montgomery about that next chance you get. Like, this is a pair that played really well. You use them in this way. Like, I don't want to, I know you have to be careful about how you word things to people you have interviews with because you don't want to sound like an asshole, but maybe that like is something that you could ask him at some point.
Yeah, you're right. And I would like to. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to be on air Saturday and Sunday during Bruins media availability. So I don't think I'm going to be there to ask him that. But yeah, I mean, certainly like if they don't try it and go like at some point, yes, it should be asked.
Yeah.
So that's a lineup change that they should absolutely implement in game 4. Will they? I don't know. But I mean, I also feel like Forbort lost his job in that pair before he even got injured. Like I don't know.
Maybe but he was playing through injury where it was like he wasn't able to keep up. Or I will say he looks faster since he came back. Like I think he's moving better. Yeah. So I think that the surgery boosted him in that way. But yeah,
he looks faster in the way that like if I lost 10 pounds, I'd be faster, but I'd still be getting smoked by anyone in a foot race.
Hey, listen. I'm just comparing it to the last version I saw before he went out of the lineup. And I don't want to pile on the guy. And I guarantee you tomorrow morning when we're on with Razor, he's going to have a different opinion.
Well, I don't know because
have a lot of good things.
Razor, I think before when you guys talk about that with Razor, it's kind of like Grzelcyk versus Forbort or something like that. I think Razor would see that Wotherspoon and Peak bring the same elements of Forbort. Like I don't think Razor would be like, oh, Forbort's out of the lineup, but Wotherspoon's in, so therefore you're not getting the same style. I think Razor might see that.
Yeah, and I kind of even I forgot about Grzelcyk already. Like that when we're talking about changes you can make. That wasn't one that popped into mind. It wasn't like you know what, maybe get Grzelcyk back in there.
I only have like a few minutes left. Is there anything else you guys wanted to make sure we get to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Before the game, this was a controversy. The Darren Drager report about the Bruins and the Panthers have been warned that their series will be highly scrutinized or whatever, which by the way, to me, the word scrutinized feels like the wrong word because that kind of just means like you're getting judged, but not really that there's any sort of like repercussions. So it got a lot of backlash because, and I know that's just a report. Drager, that's not his opinion. He's hearing that from someone. And potentially, the league wants it out there, like that they're trying to tamp down that the Bruins-Panthers series after everybody seemed like everybody had a game misconduct in game 2, to try to calm it down. And it's hockey, it's playoff hockey. And then Scott, you had a nice little sassy tweet that if you don't like that, if you're not trying to promote it, then why is it in all of your promotional videos that came out like the next morning? It was all over.
Well, yeah, it was funny. Like 20 minutes after that Drager report, the NHL's official Twitter account, X account, whatever, puts out a video promoting the Game 3 broadcast, and it's all about the Pastrnak and Tkachuk fight, and players talking about it and coaches talking about it. And it's like, Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, the NHL really hated that. Like that's why it's front and center in all their promotion of the game. Like, yeah, it's the NHL trying to play both sides of the fence, where they're like, we don't want to be viewed as this, Neanderthal violent sport, right? We want to bring in newer fans and whatever.
Yeah, and they
but also we still want the stuff that the hardcore old school fans want. So it's like they're trying to talk to two separate audiences with two different messages.
stupid. And
Yeah.
by the way, if they did change the way that that series is officiated or anything, like that is so against hockey. Like that is so against what the NHL has been and is at its best in the playoffs and why playoff hockey is so entertaining. To try to stick, if they really are trying to stick their hand in and control something like that in the series, it's not like it got out of hand to the point where people were like going to the hospital, crazy, like awful cheap shots. It was a hockey game that ended the way a lot of lopsided hockey games end.
And it got that way because the refs tried to patrol the game and throw out somebody who can police the game from the player side, and Patrick Maroon. Like they try, it's like, so you can't change. Scott, I know you have to go, but you like the players know how to police the game to an extent, especially when you have players that are there to do that. You throw out Patrick Maroon with 10 minutes to go in the game, and you have all the Florida antagonizers besides Cousins still there. It's like they're gonna have a green light with it, and that's why it unfolded the way that it did. So
yeah, one last thing I'll say on this is like, I also think some of this backlash is maybe people who don't know about series supervisors. So like, I think people hear Drager's report, and maybe he didn't clarify it enough initially, where like I think people are like, oh my god, like they're meeting with the coaches and like telling them what they're looking for. That actually happens in every playoff series. There's an official from the NHL side called a series supervisor who between every game meets with either the coach or GM or both. In the Bruins case, it's both. Montgomery and Sweeney both go to those meetings, and they explain everything, what their takeaways were from officiating, from what happened last game. Hey, last game's refs, look, they let these several cross checks go. We think they should have been called. We've told our refs, keep an eye out for cross checks. Like, that's communicated between every game in a playoff series. I think that's probably a lot of fans who didn't know that. And so I think a lot of the response to this is like, oh my God, I can't believe they're like, why are they talking to the coach? Why are they telling them they're going to be looking for stuff? Well, they do that every series in every game. So I don't think it was really like anything all that new or over the top or different. But how it was presented was that like, oh my God, the NHL is like setting off alarm bells about a few fights.
Yeah, I have an idea about how they could change the the officiating in this series. How about don't fuck up basic penalty calls and call Lauko for a hold when he's getting held, or they call him for goalie interference and he got pushed into the net. Like, how about don't fuck up basic stuff that everybody can see, and then maybe you don't have people throwing shit on the ice during and causing a whole cleanup and pause in the game when we didn't make this a big part of our segment or our podcast because there's so much more that's inexcusable that actually happened that was in control, but like it makes it hard to watch, right? That is harder to watch, that kind of stuff for a fan base than some tempers flaring.
Yeah, that was an awful call. Still no excuse for throwing stuff on the ice. But I have to go, so I'll let you guys wrap up.
Okay. So that'll probably do it. Yeah, thanks, Scott. Thank you all for listening. Have a happy Mother's Day, and we will talk to you after Game 4. Hey, guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.